Well, first off, dude, I appreciate you coming on and doing
Yeah,
this.
anytime.
So I guess we'll start with the recent and we'll work our way back. So you just had spring training,
Mhm.
first spring training. Can I talk about what that was like and transitioning that, into the start of the season now?
Yeah, so my entire draft class, we got invited to like an early camp. So we reported like February 2nd,
Yeah.
so pretty early. Um, and I'd been throwing for like all of the off season, like getting ready to throw. I arrived and I was throwing, some bullpens, some pitch design stuff, working on my pitches. I did that for the first few weeks, and then once the spring training games like actually began, I got to play in one of them. So that was like an awesome experience. It was against the Cardinals,
That's cool.
and I went in, I think like the sixth or seventh inning, got one out. It was a really cool experience,
Yeah.
getting to hang out with all the big leaguers, Yuri Perez, Sandy Alcantara,
Yeah.
like those guys in the bullpen. Like it's pretty cool to sit with them. But overall, the spring training experience was a lot of fun. It was obviously great to reconnect with all the draft guys as well after, we spend the off season not seeing each other.
Yeah.
As I started building up my pitch count, to be a starting pitcher, I stopped backing up the major league games and just getting ready for the season. So one thing the Marlins kind of introduced are like it's like kind of like a mini game within our sim game. So for a pitcher, you can like call out certain hitters, and if you get them out, you get points for your team.
Okay.
And then at the end of the week, whichever team gets like the most points, there's like incentives, like obviously win. So
Yeah.
it was a really cool, like I really thought it was a pretty cool thing. Obviously, it was my first year, so I didn't know. I didn't have anything to compare it to, but I thought it was really interesting, really fun, and it just kind of made like the sim games more entertaining. I feel like sometimes sitting through a 9 inning baseball game with no music, no energy, it can it can feel like it's a lot longer than 3 hours. Um, and yeah, I pretty much just started building up my pitch count, getting 4 innings, 5 innings, or not 5 innings yet. But I think I ended with my last game being at 4 innings. So just getting ready for the season. But overall, it was a great experience.
Yeah. So I'm interested because I've talked to a lot of guys, later in their careers, and they talk about early in their career, like burnout, not burnout, but like in spring training they overworked themselves to where the start of the season they were tired or fatigued. How do you kind of manage that so you're ready for the year where you don't overwork yourself but you're ready?
Yeah, I would say the big thing is one being honest with your coaches.
Yeah.
Like if you tell a coach like, hey, like I'm not feeling it today. Is there any chance I can maybe take a rest day? Or hey, I'm supposed to throw today. I'm not. My arm's like not feeling that great. Any chance I could maybe move this next week? I think the big thing about like kind of like that load management is like being honest with yourself, being honest about your body, and like telling the coaches and having that communication. I feel like it's very easy to be like I don't feel so great, but I don't want to say anything because I feel like the coaches will like look down on me or they're gonna think like I haven't been putting any work to like prepare myself for the season. Like I feel like that's not really the case. You just have to be honest, and you'll look back on it and be like you'll thank yourself for being honest with the coaches and like with yourself. So yeah, and then also just making sure you're not skipping out on the little things. Whether it's making sure you're getting enough sleep, hydration, diet, like so much goes into taking care of your body. It's not just doing like having like a little warm up. There's so much more outside of it that you can also control. Like kind of like you said, like your diet, your sleep, but like those habits as well. Like making sure you're finding other ways even off the field to make sure you're getting ready for the season.
Yeah, it always interests me with like especially with pitchers in the off season. It's to find like catchers because I feel like it's hard to find a catcher that can you know respectfully catch the ball and knows is at that level. How was your off season kind of like before you came here?
Well, my off season was so I was finishing my degree at University of Portland.
Okay.
So and that's also where I went to college. So I already had connections with a lot of the players there. I lived with one of the current catchers there. So for me, finding a catcher, it wasn't too difficult. But there was a lot of times where when I wanted to get my throwing in for the day, I had to throw into a net because they were either practicing or they were in classes because they had to balance their sport and school as well. For me, it was I didn't have 3 hour practices. I had a little bit of throwing, a little bit of lifting, and then I only had a couple of classes in the fall. So their schedule was honestly probably more to balance than what I had to do. So I was pretty much trying to work around when I could play catch with them instead of them working around their schedule for me. So there was times I would throw to catchers. I would try and make those be like the days I was getting off a mound. But for the most part, if I was just playing catch, not doing anything too intense, I was totally fine throwing.
Yeah. So you talked about Portland. You're from there. You went to school there. When you were being recruited during that COVID, that was a weird time. Can you kind of talk about like your recruiting process and staying home a little bit?
Yeah. So I didn't really like fully commit to baseball until probably my like between my sophomore and my junior year in high school. And actually, like my first 2 years in high school, like that summer, I was actually playing summer basketball
Oh,
because
okay.
I enjoyed playing
Yeah.
basketball a lot. So I hadn't fully committed to baseball until after we lost the first round of the state tournament my sophomore year. And I remember like we got our butt whooped. I got absolutely shelled against West Salem, and we were like I was like on the bus ride back, and I was like I almost felt like I let my team down. You know, I was like supposed to be the guy. Like I pitched really well in our conference that year, and then I just got absolutely destroyed by West Salem. So on the bus right back, I was like, I'm like fully ready to commit to baseball. I started doing stuff with Baseball Northwest. I started doing some show, like a showcase with Perfect Game, and then from there, what really jump started my recruiting process wasn't how good I was on the baseball field. It was more so my academics. So in the fall of my junior year, I went to Arizona and I did an academic showcase. And obviously, I pitched well, but I was only able to get in because I met the academic requirements. And after I pitched in the game, that was like when the first colleges started talking to me, and they were all Ivy League schools.
Yeah.
But that's like what really jump started things. And then I also had a connection at University of Portland because my freshman year in high school, there was a senior who was committed to go there. And so there was just like a natural connection there. But really going into like the spring baseball season of my junior year, I'd only been talking to University of Portland and then some Ivy League schools. And it's like as the recruiting process went on, um, those were like kind of like my only contacts. There was at some point I was talking to University of Oregon, but it just didn't really work out. They never showed up to the summer baseball games my junior year. And at that point, a lot of the Ivy League schools had either filled their rosters or it would have been too expensive to attend. So my only offer was University of Portland, and about a week after I got my offer, I was fully ready to be a pilot. The other University of Oregon, like I said, they weren't showing up to my games, and I was like, they're not really putting the time for me, so I'm ready to go be a pilot. So I committed during the summer between my junior and my senior year, and yeah, kind of like the whole process. It started like my academics, and obviously, I got better as baseball like as I matured more, trained like specifically for baseball. But what jump started everything was my academics.
That's very interesting because, like, I told you, a lot of the guys are all college athletes. It's something like we always preach. For me, I went to a school that was, had high academics, and to be honest, I wouldn't have got recruited to that school without that first. And it's kind of bringing this in. So we have a lot of like young athletes that are on the that watch the podcast, and that play multiple sports. What would be like the best piece of advice for them that are looking to play college athletes, and can you kind of tie that into with the academic side?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think academics should always come first. Like building good habits in the classroom, it translates to building good habits, for athletics, and also especially making that jump from high school to college. Like it's a difficult jump just on the academic side, but then also throwing in 20-hour practice weeks, like it can feel like very overwhelming. So if you have like a good foundation with the academics, you can kind of make that a little easier. So that way the adjustment to college athletics, it's still big, but you're already taking care of the academic side. Like now you have like more capacity to kind of focus on the athletic side. Another thing I would say is like don't feel like you have to specialize in a sport too soon. Like I said, like I played a lot of sport. I played soccer until 8th grade, played basketball for 2 years in high school, but so I don't think you have to really focus on baseball or whatever sport it might be like too early. I definitely think um, there's some good merit in having skills from like multiple sports. I think it translates really well once you like decide to really focus on one sport.
Yeah. So correct me if I'm wrong on these because I remember, but so in 2021 you pitched a few innings, and then you went 2022 you were injured the whole season. Kind of talk about the start of your career because getting to play a little bit as a freshman, a lot of people don't get to do that. And then I imagine at that time you had some goals leading in 2022, and then the injury.
Yeah. So yeah, my freshman year, like I obviously didn't pitch super well. And I think the challenging part for me was kind of like the mental side of things. I when I was in high school, like I said, I was the guy, and I also didn't really get to play my senior year, so it had been a while since I'd pitched in a competitive game. But also like that jump from high school ball to Division I college, like it was a little intimidating. I'm not quite sure if that's the right word, but it was competition that was better than I'd ever played against, and so I kind of struggled mentally, and I didn't pitch that well. I didn't have the confidence, the belief in myself, and I started speaking with a sports psychologist who my dad referred me to. Um, and we spoke for maybe it was like a month or so about like, hey, how can I like build that confidence in myself? Like, what are some things that I can do to improve like my mental side of the game? And she gave me some exercises, some breathing techniques, some stuff that I could actively do, like whether it was the day before or the day that I was starting, or even like while I'm on the mound, just helping my like keep that confidence in myself. And then my very last game of my freshman year, it was against Oregon State, and that day before the game, I had like my exit meeting with the coaches, and they said, "Hey, we're going to give you one more chance against Oregon State today." And I think that was a big piece of why, like, of like just jump starting like all the success I had afterwards. It was the fact that they told me that I was going to pitch. Like every other time, except for like one exception, I came out of the bullpen, and it's kind of like a, "Hey, Brink, like go get going," and it's like you feel like that adrenaline, that rush. Like I'd always been a starter. Like I didn't have a routine to get ready out of the bullpen, but today they told me, "Hey, you're going to pitch today." So I had some time to like really get ready. And Oregon State, they're a phenomenal baseball program. I think they were ranked like top 20 at the time.
They're always good.
I hadn't pitched great like all year. Like Oregon had hit me hard twice. I had one start against Utah Valley. I didn't even go 2 innings. Like it wasn't a great season so far, but they said, "Hey, like you got one more chance today. Like now you know." And I did like all the stuff that I'd worked through with the psychologist, and it was by far like the best outing I'd ever thrown. I think I threw like 3 scoreless innings. I got my first collegiate win, and then I carried that confidence all through summer ball when I played with the Portland Pickles in the WCL. Um, and from there, like I just had the confidence, like, hey, if I can pitch against a ranked team and like a great program like Oregon State, like there's nothing that's stopping me from throwing against WCL teams and like coming back in the WCC the next year and like being, having a great role for the team. I pitched really well in summer. My best start was against the best team in the league, like against the Corvallis Knights. I had like 10 strikeouts, 5 innings. Like it was a great summer for me. And then going into my sophomore year, obviously I had expectations. I was going to contribute to this team, but I got COVID like right when I came back from winter break. I had to take a few weeks to like quarantine myself, and then I came back and I may have rushed back into things a little too fast. I threw a bullpen. I was feeling good, but then during one of our inner squads, like right before the season, I tore my UCL, got Tommy John, and that took me out for the entire year. And then, yeah, obviously came back my junior, senior year. Those were really good, but that's kind of like what the first 2 years were like.
Yeah, I kind of want to talk about the mental side of the game because I love that, especially with pitchers. I love talking to because it's like our sports, we're both one-on-one. Like it's a team sport, but you're with the batter, How do you kind of like approach an at bat? And then after that, I want to know like when you're down an account, like 3-0, how do you try and make like it's not like a mistake, but you're down. How do you try not to make like one mistake, not a bigger mistake? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I would definitely say like when you're approaching that bat, you just have to have the confidence that whoever steps into the box, like you're going to be able to get them out. Like if you don't have that belief in yourself, like you're already losing half the battle. You have to have that confidence that regardless of who you're facing or who you're up against, like that, hey, like I've made it to professional baseball. Like you have to trust that you belong there and that you deserve to be there. And that's kind of like goes back to some of the stuff that I that I was told by the psychologist. Like you have to believe that you earned this spot to like be pitching in this moment. You have to know that you deserve to be here. So it doesn't matter who steps in the box because you're already here and you've earned that position. I would say like when it comes to like if you're you're in a 3-0 count, you throw a fastball, they take it. 3-1 is like a heavy damage count for hitters. Like you just have to trust your stuff. I think a big thing is just like having a lot of trust and a lot of confidence. Understanding that hitting is very hard to do. So sometimes like the best hitters will hit 350. So even if you're feeding them, some good pitches, like hitting a baseball is still really hard. And then on top of that, if you have a lot of trust in your stuff, it's no count. There isn't a count that you can't come back from in baseball. There's been tons of times where I've been 3-0 and I end up striking the guy out. There's been times where I'm 0-2 and I walk a guy or they hit a home run. Like sometimes that's just baseball, but you have to know that whatever happened the pitch before, it shouldn't dictate what's going to happen for the following pitch. I feel like having a good pitch by pitch mentality and taking it one at a time, that's great. Not only for baseball but for any sport. You miss a shot in basketball, it shouldn't affect how you shoot the next one.
Yeah, it's one of the hardest. It might be the hardest thing you could do is hit a baseball. People always say like, "Oh, I could hit." Like when you actually watch like the King of JUCO videos, or like I tell people to always watch this. Like look at like the movement on that. Like even like a Skeens now, his fastball is like
his arsenal. It's
insane.
unbelievable. We got to go watch his opening day start against the Marlins down in Lone Depot. And it's just, you look at the metrics on his pitches, and it's same with Sandy Alcantara. I mean, both of those guys had phenomenal starts, and it's like they're so talented, and the things that they can do with the baseball, it's like it doesn't make sense sometimes. And the fact that people are also able to hit the ball over 100 miles an hour or hit home runs, like it's how do you have the hand-eye coordination for that?
It's wild. I mean, you went Tommy John. It's probably one of the biggest injuries you have in the sport. It's very mental too when you have a big injury like how did you kind of like what was that time like and how did you like focus on like okay I had this happen but I gotta come back.
I definitely, I was pretty bummed out like when it first happened, but I think I always saw it as like this big opportunity to just come back better. And I told myself one thing I'm not going to try and do is like rush my recovery. I'm not going to like try and do like extra exercises to try and come back any earlier than, like what my body needs. But I also told myself whatever I'm supposed to do in a day, I'm going to do that. I'm not going to do anything more. I'm not going to do anything less. So if there was days where all I had to do was like some like banded exercises. That's all I was going to do that day. I wasn't going to try and do anything extra. I wasn't going to try and overwork my body or do anything too crazy. But I was also going to make sure that I wasn't going to miss anything throughout the entire process. And I kind of took it like as a day by day process. Like if whatever I had to do today, if I did it, then whatever I had to do tomorrow, I would do that. Whatever I had to do in 2 days, I
Small
would do
goals
that.
that lead to a big goal.
Exactly. So then I look back on like my recovery, and it's like I have 365 days where I gave everything 100%. I didn't overwork myself, but I also wasn't selling myself short. I think that's what allowed me to come back, better than I ever was before. It was just the fact that I gave everything I had for one day, and I did that 365 days in a row.
Did it help like because I imagine during the time you got to watch the game a lot do you kind of see a different perspective or did it help at all?
So that year, my sophomore year, I it was kind of bummy, but also like definitely pretty interesting. So every home game, I was never in the dugout. I was always in the press box doing University of Portland doesn't have TrackMan. We have Flight Scope, so I was manually inputting the pitch, the outcome, and so like obviously I like really wanted to be in the dugout with all the other guys. Like, and that was like the first thing I wanted to do after I got the surgery. I just wanted to go hang out with the guys and just like be back on the field and enjoy like the brotherhood that we had at University of Portland. But also like being in the press box, there was definitely like some cool things that you just like pick up on like, and it's something that coaches will always preach. But it's getting the leadoff hitter out, making sure you're throwing a lot of first pitch strikes or throwing a strike in 1-1 counts. Like you notice like teams that kind of do those things better than the others, like they typically end up getting more favorable results or limiting walks on the leadoff hitter in the inning, like trying to limit kind of like those things, like those negatives, like whichever team ends up doing that better, for the most part, they'll have the more favorable results.
Yeah, so it's kind of hard to find like some information for this, but I remember I saw that you got like assigned to the Cape Cod League. Then you got drafted. Can you kind of talk about like what the draft process was like for you and everything with that?
Yeah. So going into my senior year, there had been like a little draft talk, but I didn't have an agent. I hadn't really talked to any team for like the very beginning of like the fall of my senior year. But over like the summer going into my senior year, I'd been working out, putting in a lot of hard work and effort, and in that fall, I was throwing harder than ever. And when we were having like our inter squad scrimmages in the fall, some scouts I think they took notice, and so I started getting some phone calls, and then everything it kind of started happening. It almost felt like it was all happening at once. Then I started getting a call from an agent, like, hey, like, let's meet up. Like, I might want to represent you. And there was all these teams, all these questionnaires that I was filling out, and it felt like everything was kind of happening at once. But um, I eventually found an agent. He kind of told me like how everything would work. And I also early in the fall, the pitching coach he said, "Hey, like I've got a spot for you in the Cape Cod League. And I spoke with the GM. He said, yeah, like you can sign a contract now, but it doesn't mean you have to play for us. So I was like, I might, like, I signed a contract, but I was like, if I don't feel like, if I throw too many innings in the spring and I don't feel like throwing, 20 innings more in the summer, it's something I could fall back onto, but it's not a full commitment.
It's a great summer league.
Yeah. So all of the draft stuff for me kind of happened in the fall, and that was like when I was having meetings with all the regional scouts and the area scouts. Once the spring season started, I rarely heard from any of them. I think they knew that, hey, it's his season. Like, let's have him focus. If I had a good outing, 2 or 3 guys would say, hey, really good job today. Loved what you did out there. I was like, thanks, but it was never really nothing more than that. And then after my senior year, or after that senior season, I went to the combine. But for me, that was mostly just about doing the medical stuff, also, and having some more meetings with some of the higher ups in the department. Because for the most part, I met with the area scouts, maybe like 1 or 2 cross checkers. But at the combine, I was meeting with some of the guys. So, and also doing the medical stuff. I actually also threw at the combine as well, just to show that, hey, I threw 100 innings in the spring, but I can still sit 94, 95, after all of that. So just also showing that, I take care of my body. Like I can throw, 100 innings and still be good to go. And then after the combine, it was pretty much just laying low until the draft, and then obviously got picked up by the Marlins, and
Yeah. A few more questions. I don't want to take too much of your time. So you come. It's very interesting, the draft. When you get drafted, you come down here, and then you have the FCL time, and it's a very big culture shock to a lot of people. Like, especially I hear it's not like a I hate to say it, not like language barrier, but you go and everything. It's a lot of people speak Spanish. It's a lot of different than the college atmosphere. What was your kind of transition like with that?
I mean, I definitely would say there is a language barrier at one of the times, or at some times. It's very hard to have conversations with with some of the some of my Latin teammates. But for me, Spanish has always come a little more naturally because my mom, she's from Mexico. So she and a lot of her side of the family, they speak Spanish when they're together. So Spanish. It's always come a little more easier to me. And I took Spanish in high school, but I never spoke any of it with her side of the family, and I never took any Spanish classes in college. And it's looking back on it, it's
You wish you would have.
I wish I would have so much. One of my housemates, he speaks Spanish, and there's definitely times where I'm trying to say something he doesn't understand me, or he says something I don't understand it. But we both know that, and it's okay to have awkward conversations. I think
you guys got baseball that bonds you guys.
Exactly, and I think they appreciate the guys who will go out of their way to maybe look or sound dumb, because it's better than just sitting in the corner and only talking with some of the American players. I think they appreciate the guys who will go out of their way to try and talk with them, even if it doesn't make sense or it sounds terrible. They appreciate the effort, and I think the same goes with us. I appreciate some of the Latin players who will try and talk to me in English, because I can help them and they can help me with my Spanish, and I feel like that's what kind of creates the friendship and the relationship.
Especially long term in the game, you probably want to be pretty fluent in it, as you go on in your career. So we talked about the small goals leading to big goals. Every season you probably come into that. What was kind of those small goals, and what's your big goal by the end of the season?
I would definitely say my big, very ambitious goal by the end of this year is to play in Pensacola. Obviously, I would like to start really well in low A.
Beloit.
Make it to Beloit. Obviously I'd like to do good there, and I think my ambitious goal is to try and make it in Pensacola. And if it doesn't happen, obviously I'd like to be able to take it one level at a time, but I also have to know that I'm one of the older guys, and I was pretty fortunate last last November. I along with the rest of my draft class, we all went to our training facility in the DR, and you just see so much young talent.
Yeah.
And it's almost now that the season's starting, it's almost like there's there's a clock on me now. It's I've got I don't especially as one of the older guys who was drafted at 23 years old. I don't have much time. And there's a lot of young talent that's eager to take my spot on the low A team. So obviously I have to perform well to kind of work my way up the ranks. So my ambitious goal is to make it to Pensacola this year.
Yeah, and how do you kind of? It's probably got to be it's a little bit different than college. Like you kind of have that talk. How do you deal with that mentally and like everything with that? Because it's hard to not have a little bit of pressure there.
Mm-hmm. I would say, I mean, pressure. It's like it's only something that you end up creating on yourself.
Yeah.
So I think having expectations of yourself. It's always having goals. It's great, but make them realistic. Make them you know feel like make sure it's something you feel like you can achieve. Like if I said, yeah, I want to pitch in the big leagues this year, that's like it's probably not going to happen. It's like if that's my only goal, like if I'm not going to achieve it, like I'm just going to feel like I failed my goal. So that's why I think it's good to have some ambitious goals, but also like having other goals for yourself that if you don't miss one but you hit some of the others, it's not like I completely like didn't reach any of my goals. So there's like other goals that I have that aren't just like make it to double A.
So I want to add one more question, then we always finish with one. So I didn't know you went to the Dominican Republic. What was that experience like? Didn't play baseball.
Mm-hmm. So it was a little different for me versus some of my draft class teammates. So we had the option to go for 2 or 3 weeks, but I was still finishing some classes in school to get my degree. So I only went for 1 week, but I honestly thought like it was a great experience. The facility was super nice. There was so much energy, just like getting to work out like in our teams, so many competitions, like everything was very competitive, and I'm a very competitive person, so I love that competitive nature. But then there was also a good amount of downtime where like there was so many more teammates that I'd never met before, and it's like we would like play basketball or play knockout, and it's like it was just so much fun. It was almost like I was like back in like elementary school where I was like during recess like I was playing like knockout with like fourth and fifth graders, like people I'd never met, but like we just love like being competitive, like having fun. So it was so much fun just like getting to go to the DR and like playing basketball with them, but then also getting our work in for baseball, getting our lifting and our throwing. So I thought it was a great experience. We got to go watch one of the Mexican League games, like, and the energy that they bring to those stadiums, like it was pretty cool. It's definitely something that I wish I could experience again.
Yeah. So this is the last question. We always finish off with it. I know you're just starting your professional career, but when your career is over, down the line, how would you like to be remembered?
Oh,
it's a tough one.
Yeah.
It's funny because I showed like these like we'll have guys that have come on 2 or 3 times, and they'll be like from season to season. It's funny to see how their answers have changed. That's why we always do that.
Oh man, I think I would want to just be remembered as like a great teammate who like you never questioned his work ethic. You never like he had like a natural like leadership abilities. He always brought out the best in his teammates. All like the good characteristics. He was very charismatic. He was fun to talk to. Like, if you want to play ping pong, he was always down to like, have some fun. But also a guy who took his career very seriously, did everything he could to, put him in the best position to succeed.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time. Hopefully we can do this again sometime down the line.
For sure.
But thanks again, man.
Yeah, of course.